The CEO didn't say a word. He just stood there, frozen, watching as a black woman in a worn jumpsuit worked silently on an engine his top engineers had already given up on. She wasn't scheduled. She wasn't cleared. But what she did that night rewrote more than just a repair report. It changed the way he saw everything. This is the story of Patricia Anderson, a name the CEO hadn't known, a face no one expected to solve what an entire department couldn't. No title, no degree, just pure instinct, relentless focus, and hands that refused to let things stay broken. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Raw, real, and quietly revolutionary. And let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? We love seeing how far these stories travel. Stick around, because after this moment, the CEO was never the same again. The wind had quieted by the time Patricia stepped into Hangar 9. Midnight pressed heavily against the old steel beams, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like tired wasps. She didn't flinch. Her boots echoed across the cold floor, each step steady, calculated. Behind her, the metal door groaned shut, sealing out the world. Everything smelled of oil and burnt rubber. The air was thick with dust and jet fuel, the kind of scent that clung to your skin long after you left. To most, it reeked. To her, it felt like home. A Cessna 208B sat dormant in the corner, its underbelly exposed, hydraulic lines running like tired veins along its flaps. Patricia narrowed her eyes. The maintenance logs claimed it was cleared. The diagnostics said green. But her gut twisted every time she walked past it. Something was wrong. She didn't have proof. Just instinct. She rolled up her sleeves and grabbed her flashlight. Its beam cut through the dim like a blade. Her breath hung visible in the air. No one was supposed to be here this late. She wasn't on the night shift. She wasn't even authorized to touch this aircraft. But she'd seen enough crews rush clearance reports just to shave a few minutes off a checklist. That shortcut mindset didn't sit right with her. Not when lives were on the line. She knelt beside the hydraulic manifold and pried the panel loose. Cold metal bit at her fingertips. One connector sat looser than it should, barely a fraction. But fractions matter when you're 10,000 feet above nothing. Her tools were basic: worn pliers, a cracked multimeter, and a notepad filled with hand-drawn schematics. She wasn't supposed to know how to read pressure flow maps, but she did. She wasn't supposed to carry a torque wrench in her bag, but she did. She murmured to herself, "If this fails mid-flight, nose pitch locks up. Pilot pulls left. Then what?" Her pen scratched a diagram on a coffee-stained invoice. Behind her, the wind howled again, rattling the loose sheet metal above. She didn't look up. Focus anchored her, tunneled her vision. She reached inside the panel and adjusted the line. A small click, still too much tension. Then she saw it, hairline corrosion along the actuator pivot. Not enough to trigger a sensor, but enough to snap under stress. Her stomach dropped. Someone had cleared this bird for flight in less than 6 hours. Patricia stood up fast. Her breath was shallow now. She moved to the service console, checked the aircraft's assignment, scheduled for a 6:10 a.m. charter, 12 passengers, business route to Phoenix. She stared at the screen. Her fingers hesitated, then hovered over the override request. But she couldn't file it. Not officially. She wasn't certified to ground a plane. A choice settled over her like a weight. Report it and risk being fired, or walk away and let the error ride the sky. She stepped back, heart thudding. That's when the hangar door creaked open. A man stepped through, tall, mid-50s, dark overcoat. His shoes tapped across the floor. With authority. She froze. Grant Walters, corporate auditor. She'd seen his photo in the break room. He wasn't supposed to be here until Monday. Their eyes met. He looked at the tools on the floor, then at the open panel. His voice was low. "You working late, Ms.?" She swallowed hard. "Anderson. Patricia Anderson." He raised an eyebrow. "You're not scheduled tonight." "I know." He walked closer, looked down at the actuator. Why are you touching this system? Because it's not safe. She didn't blink, and no one else checked. Grant crouched beside the unit. He didn't say anything, just stared at the corrosion. Then he looked at her again. You found this on your own. She nodded. No diagnostics picked it up, but I know what happens when metal starts to fatigue there. He studied her face, her hands, her notes. Where'd you learn to read flow charts? School. Didn't finish. Life got in the way. Silence filled the space between them, then Grant stood. He didn't scold, didn't compliment either, just nodded once, slowly. Then he turned and walked out. Patricia stood there, heart pounding, unsure if she was about to be promoted or reported. But she didn't regret staying. Not for a second. The cold morning air slapped Patricia's face as she stepped off the staff shuttle. Her hands were still shaking. The hangar lights hadn't even warmed up yet, flickering like half-forgotten thoughts. She tightened her coat around her and walked faster, trying to ignore the way her chest still thudded from the night before. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. Her mind had run in circles, about the corrosion, about Grant Walters, about what might come next. No call, no email, no reprimand, nothing. That silence was louder than any alarm. Inside the break room, the same stale coffee simmered in the same rusted pot. Curtis leaned against the counter, cradling his mug like it was something sacred. He glanced up and snorted. When he saw her, "You look like hell," he muttered. She walked past him without a word. Curtis shook his head. "Staying late again, huh? You think that gets you a badge upgrade?" She stopped. Her back was to him, but her voice was sharp. "I think it keeps people alive." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. Then Kayla stepped in, carrying a toolbox and an armful of wiring diagrams. She smiled at Patricia, warm but cautious. "Morning, you good?" Patricia hesitated. "I'm fine." Kayla's eyes lingered for a second longer like she didn't quite believe it. Then she walked with her toward the east wing. The maintenance bay was loud already, wrenches clanking, radios buzzing, the hiss of compressed air lines. Everything moved in rhythm. Patricia didn't. She moved through it like a shadow, clocked, and grabbed her kit and headed straight to the back storage. She needed space to think. In the far corner of the storage bay, surrounded by disassembled pressure pumps and stripped circuit boards, she found her quiet. She pulled out the old schematic she'd sketched last night and spread it over a crate. Her fingers traced each line again. She replayed every moment, every click, every variable she'd touched. Her breath slowed. Control returned. Then her radio chirped. "Anderson, office now." She froze. The voice wasn't dispatched, it wasn't anyone local. It was him. She left her tools and walked fast, heart racing again. The walk from the bay to the admin wing had never felt longer or more exposed. Inside the office, Grant stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back. A second man, older, with a shaved head and gold cufflinks, sat at the desk. He didn't look up. Grant turned, closed the door. She did. He motioned to a chair. She stayed standing. The cufflink man finally spoke. "Do you know what protocol is for unauthorized access to a grounded aircraft?" Her throat dried. "I didn't touch the flight computer, just the manifold, visual inspection." His eyes narrowed. "You documented this?" "Yes." He held up a printed copy of her schematic, handwritten, annotated, creased. "This?" She nodded. Grant finally stepped forward. "What made you check that plane?" She looked at him. It didn't feel right. "That's not procedure." "No," she said, "it's experience." The cufflink man smirked. "You have a degree, Miss Anderson?" "No." "Certification?" "No." "Then why should anyone believe you over a diagnostic scan that passed?" "Every test?" Patricia straightened. "Because I've seen scans pass and metal fail. Because a sensor doesn't feel stress like a hand does. The room went still. Grant looked at her for a long moment. We pulled the aircraft, had the actuator removed. You were right. The man at the desk tensed slightly, clearly annoyed. Grant continued, voice even. We also pulled your personnel file. Patricia braced herself. 3 years, 0 infractions, 0 commendations, 5 flagged reports, none followed up. She spoke quickly. Because no one reads flagged reports unless something explodes. He nodded once. You have a pattern, Miss Anderson, and I think it's time someone finally paid attention to it. The other man scoffed. You're opening a liability. Can hear, Grant. She's not qualified. Grant didn't look at him. He looked only at Patricia. I'm assigning you to safety observation detail. 2 weeks. You'll work with engineering to identify other potential risks quietly. No titles. No promises, just eyes and brains. Her pulse thundered. Yes, sir. The other man shook his head, grabbed his coat, and left without a word. When the door closed, Grant stepped closer. You're going to make enemies. You good with that? She looked him in the eye. I've had practice. He smiled. That's what I thought. Outside, the hangar buzzed like normal. Patricia walked slower this time, her steps heavier but her chest lighter. She returned to her crate, folded the schematic neatly, and placed it inside her tool bag. Her hands didn't shake anymore. Kayla caught up to her near the coffee machine. An hour later. You okay? You've been gone. Patricia nodded. Got reassigned. Kayla blinked. What? Where? Safety detail. 2 weeks. Kayla grinned. You serious? Dead. Curtis passed behind them, caught just enough to raise an eyebrow. Wait. You? On safety? Patricia didn't even turn. Try not to crash anything while I'm watching. His smirk faltered. That night, Patricia didn't stay late. She went home, sat with her mom, ate leftovers, watched the ceiling fan spin. But deep down, something had cracked open. It wasn't respect. Not yet. But it was something like it. The briefing room smelled like printer toner and indifference. Patricia stood by the back wall, clipboard in hand, while engineers shuffled in wearing pressed polos and practiced expressions. No one looked at her. Not really. A few gave curt nods, the kind you offer a delivery driver, not a teammate. The projector came to life. The head of systems, Martin Greaves, cleared his throat and launched into a checklist of routine diagnostics. Patricia didn't interrupt. She listened, watched, waited. Grant had said, observee first. He hadn't warned her how hard that would be. Every time Martin spoke about acceptable wear, she remembered the frayed actuator. Every line on the screen reminded her of how close they'd come. When the meeting ended, people rose quickly, talking over each other, sharing half-jokes and shortcuts. Curtis lingered near the door, arms crossed, blocking her way out. Still pretending you're one of us? He asked, voice quiet but sharp. She met his eyes. Not pretending, I'm here. He stepped aside but not far. That won't last. Patricia walked past him without another word. Later that afternoon, she stood in the maintenance wing's north corridor, arms deep in a wiring junction box that fed power to the diagnostics interface. It was supposed to be routine, just an observation task. But the numbers didn't line up. Voltage was fluctuating just slightly, 1.7% off normal. Too small to matter? That's what most would say. But she'd seen what 1.7% could do when heat and pressure were involved. She unscrewed the housing, reached in, and traced the lead. Her fingers found heat damage near a pin that looked newer than the rest. Someone had replaced it. Poorly. Behind her, Kayla's voice broke the silence. You're not logging that? Patricia stood up, brushing metal shavings from her shirt. I will, after I double-check. Kayla stepped closer. You know Curtis is gunning for you, right? He says you're looking for problems that aren't there. There are always problems, Patricia said. Some of us just bother to find them. Kayla hesitated. I believe you, but you're not making it easy for yourself. Wasn't trying to. That night, the airport slept under thick clouds. Wind clawed at the hangar doors, moaning like something alive. Patricia sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, surrounded by stripped wires and sensor modules. She wasn't on the clock. No one knew she was here. But the system was still off. The reading wasn't right, and if she didn't fix it, someone else might not even see it. Her tools were spread around, her like instruments on an operating table. The new pin needed reinforcement. The surrounding leads had to be reset. She soldered carefully, methodically, each breath steady. A loud clank echoed from behind. She turned fast. Curtis stood at the edge of the light, arms folded. "You just can't help yourself, can you?" She kept working. "If you're here to report me, get it over with." He stepped closer. "You think you're better than the rest of us?" "No," she said. "I think the standard's just gotten low." Curtis's jaw tightened. "You don't get it. We've been here for years. We know how things work. You make us look bad." "If doing my job makes you look bad," she said, "maybe you're not doing yours." That landed harder than she meant it to. He didn't reply. Then he walked away. She exhaled slowly. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of holding her ground. The fix took 20 more minutes. When it was done, the voltage held steady. She logged it anonymously and left before sunrise. The next day, Martin addressed the whole department about a quiet correction that likely prevented a circuit failure in the diagnostics bay. No names mentioned, no credit given. Patricia didn't care, not for the recognition, but as she sat near the back again, pen moving fast over a new schematic, she caught Kayla glancing back at her. The nod was small, but it was real. That evening, a new directive arrived. All power junctions to be re-evaluated based on revised thresholds. The attached diagram? Hers, cleaned up, re-rendered, but still hers. She printed a copy, folded it once, slid it into her back pocket. One win, quiet, unseen, but solid, like water slowly shaping stone. Patricia arrived early. Not just early for her, but before security checkpoint opened. Early? The sun hadn't broken the horizon. The parking lot lights buzzed under a gray sky that threatened rain. She sat in her truck, fingers gripping the steering wheel, eyes locked on the building like it might shift before her if she looked away. Something was coming. She didn't know what, but the air had changed, charged and waiting. Her phone buzzed. 5th floor. Now. No signature, no pleasantries. Patricia took the stairs. Every step echoed harder than the last. Her boots weren't made for carpeted hallways and chrome elevators. She felt like a smudge on glass, like a wrong note in a quiet room. The 5th floor conference room was all glass and ego. The kind of place she'd only seen through passing glances, never from inside. People were already seated, shirts crisp, ties perfect, expressions flat. She recognized a few engineers. Others wore badges she didn't know, faces sharper, older, more closed off. The seats were filled, except one, right near the center, across from Grant Walters. He nodded to her, calm and unreadable. "Patricia, take a seat." She did, slowly, carefully, like one wrong move might make the whole table vanish. No one smiled. No one even pretended. Grant stood. "This is Patricia Anderson. She's not part of the engineering team. She's not on our roster, but she discovered and corrected a systems flaw in a power junction that none of our scans flagged. She also identified corrosion in an actuator cleared by our safety diagnostics. That aircraft was grounded due to her direct intervention. No credentials, no clearance, just competence." He let the silence sit like a weight. Then he turned to her. "Tell them what you found." Her throat was dry. Her fingers twitched against her notepad. But she stood. "I was reviewing voltage consistency across the diagnostic relay interface. There was a fluctuation, small, but irregular. I opened the junction and found an incorrect replacement pin that had been soldered without thermal shielding. It was heating the leads just enough to cause gradual degradation. Someone scoffed. She kept going. I also found corrosion in the 208's actuator pivot. The sensors didn't catch it because the damage was beneath the rotation point. Another voice, older, clipped. Why were you even inside that aircraft? I wasn't assigned, she said. I checked it after hours because I had a bad feeling. A younger man spoke up, skeptical. So we're grounding aircraft now on bad feelings? Grant didn't flinch. We grounded it because... She was right. Curtis was there too, sitting farther down the table, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He hadn't said a word yet, but his silence was louder than any accusation. Another engineer leaned forward. And you used what tools exactly? My own, she replied. Personal set. I logged everything I touched. Where did you get the training to recognize thermal drift from unshielded soldering? I studied mechanical and electrical engineering at UT Austin. 3 years. Dropped out when my mother got sick. I've been learning on the job ever since. The room shifted. Some eyes softened, some sharpened. Curtis finally spoke, voice flat. So we're letting dropouts rewrite our safety procedures now? Patricia looked directly at him. No one rewrote anything. I didn't ask to be here. I just fixed what you missed. The tension cracked. Kayla, seated in the corner, cleared her throat. I reviewed her work. The revised schematic she drafted improves current distribution by reducing thermal friction across the secondary relay path. I ran the numbers twice. It's solid. Someone else added, we've already adjusted 3 units based on her design. Grant nodded. This isn't about titles anymore. It's about outcomes. A beat passed. No one argued. He turned to Patricia. You've earned 2 weeks of access to this team. No promises after that. But I want everyone here to spend the next hour reviewing her process, asking questions, and thinking about what we can learn from it. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. You good with that? He asked. She nodded. Yes, sir. Then the questions came, relentless, technical, unforgiving. They asked about current thresholds, about heat limits, and decision-making. Under stress. Some were curious. Some wanted her to fail. She answered each with precision, not cocky, just sure. She had lived with these systems more intimately than most of them ever had. She didn't learn from books. She learned from burns, from stripped screws, from long nights staring at tangled wires under flickering lights. Curtis tried one last jab. What textbook taught you to bypass standard wire insulation protocols? She didn't blink. None. A busted floor fan and a copper filament taught me that. Someone laughed quietly. By the time the hour was up, the energy in the room had shifted. Some still doubted her, but most were listening now. As the group started to disperse, Grant pulled her aside. You did good, he said. She exhaled. So, what happens now? He looked at her for a long moment. Now we see who notices. That evening, she returned to Hangar 9. The same hum, the same chill, the same scent of machine oil clung to everything, but it felt different now, like maybe she belonged there, not by accident, not by defiance, but by merit. She stood beside the aircraft she had grounded and placed a hand gently on the cool surface near the pivot housing. Not all victories came with applause. Some came with silence, and the knowledge that this time the plane would fly because of her. The new badge was temporary, no title on it, just Access Level C, Special Detail. But it felt heavier than anything Patricia had clipped to her chest before. As she passed through the sensor gate that Monday morning, security gave her a different kind of look. Not suspicious, not admiring, just unsure, like they weren't sure where she fit anymore. She wasn't either. The 5th floor workspace felt foreign. Not because it was polished, though it was. Sleek screens, soundproofed panels, ergonomic chairs with lumbar presets. No oil stains, no rattling vents, no scent of burnt fuses or engine grease. It felt like a different world entirely. A world that spoke in clean code and whiteboard diagrams. Her desk was in the corner, next to the window overlooking the tarmac. No nameplate, just a stack of forms and a blank login. A place to start. And a message from Grant, printed on a sticky note. No pressure, just be excellent. G. By noon, 3 engineers had walked by without speaking. Curtis passed twice, said nothing. His silence wasn't passive, it was charged. Every time he glanced at her desk, Patricia felt like a challenge thrown in the dark. She stayed quiet, observed, took notes during 2 meetings without speaking. She reviewed 3 system flowcharts and marked 3 points of failure. No one asked her opinion. No one needed to. She left the diagrams, annotated, corrected, clean, on the whiteboard near the diagnostic station. No initials, just precision. On. Wednesday, Elise Tran approached. Young, sharp, usually quiet in meetings but always watching. You wrote this? Elise tapped the corner of the diagram. Patricia nodded. Didn't mean to step on anyone. No, Elise said, eyes narrowing slightly. You fixed something no one even flagged. I've been working on that loop delay for 2 weeks. Patricia tried to shrug it off. It just didn't feel right. Elise smirked. You say that a lot? Patricia hesitated. Only when I'm right. Later that day, Elise invited her to sit in on a sensor calibration test for a new conveyor alignment unit. Patricia accepted. She didn't say much during the setup, but when the test started throwing out inconsistent outputs, she leaned forward. You've got a delay in your pressure response unit, she said. Elise frowned. It's new. Still bottlenecking, Patricia said. Your fallback loop is prioritizing the wrong set. Swap the capacitor threshold. Drop it 0.2 and rerun. Elise raised an eyebrow, made the change, and ran it again. Clean output. No. Errors. By the end of the day, Patricia had 3 silent nods from engineers who hadn't spoken to her all week, and 1 glance from Curtis that could have melted steel. The next morning, it started. A memo appeared in the internal server titled Protocol Clarification, Contribution Validity, and Chain of Approval. The language was formal, indirect, but it was clear enough. Any undocumented or unofficial contributions would be disregarded without proper credentials. Patricia stared at the screen. No signature. No author tag, but she didn't need one. She printed it anyway, folded it once, put it in her notebook. Grant called her in just before lunch. I saw the memo, he said before she sat down. Curtis? He didn't answer. Didn't have to. I'm not trying to shake the system, she said. I'm just doing the job. I know, he replied, but some people don't see it that way. What do you see? He studied her for a long moment, then he said, I see a test, not of you, of us. She exhaled. So what now? He handed her a stack of documents, maintenance logs from 3 different locations. Find what's missing. You've got 48 hours. She didn't ask questions, just took the papers and went back to her desk. The next 36 hours were a blur. She barely left the desk, poring over spreadsheets, comparing performance graphs, handwriting, side notes in the margins like puzzle pieces falling into place. She skipped lunch, skipped dinner. Elise brought her coffee. Someone else dropped a sandwich beside her without a word. She didn't even look up. By Friday morning, she had it. A faulty relay configuration from a supplier batch, model FIC3A57F. It had been marked as compatible in all 3 locations but hadn't been retested under the new software patch. On paper, it checked out. In real-world wear, it would fail within weeks. She wrote the report. Detailed, clear, supported with 3 simulations and a corrected parts diagram. She submitted it at 7:59 a.m. At 8:15, the floor director called an emergency huddle. 8:30, Patricia watched from the corner as the team reviewed the relay flaw on the projector. Elise stood beside her. You found it, she whispered. Yeah, Patricia said, but wait for it. Curtis raised his hand. With all due respect, we haven't verified that her simulations account for multi-point stress under active load. Grant turned to Patricia. Response? She nodded once. They do, slide 14. The projector clicked. Data appeared. Curtis read it. His jaw moved slightly, but no words came. The room was silent. Then someone clapped. One slow, deliberate clap. Then another joined. Then 4, 8. The sound spread like heat. Curtis didn't clap. He walked out. That night, Patricia didn't go straight home. She stayed in the hangar after dark. Not to fix anything, not to find a flaw, just to stand where it all started. Her badge still said special detail. But people were starting to call her something else. They didn't say it out loud. Not yet. But she heard it in the hallway, in the break room, in the way people looked at her notes now with questions instead of doubt. Not a janitor. Not a helper. Not lucky. But essential. And it was only the beginning. Monday came with no warning, no music, no fireworks. Just rain tapping against the glass like a clock running out. Patricia stood in front of the 5th floor elevator, in a navy button-down, pressed khakis, and a pair of second-hand loafers that pinched her toes. She had ironed the shirt twice, scrubbed the dirt from her old canvas bag. Still, she didn't feel ready. She stepped inside. The numbers ticked up. Her reflection stared back from the silver panels. Tired eyes, steady jaw. No nameplate. No uniform anymore. But the same hands, the same gut, the same fire that hadn't gone out since Hangar 9. The floor was buzzing when she stepped out. People moving fast. Voices clipped. Terminals glowing with side-by-side performance feeds. Elise waved her over, eyes bright, fingers dancing over the keys. They ran the new load sequencing model across the Fort Worth unit, she said. Efficiency jumped 23%. Patricia blinked. That's not possible. Elise grinned. Tell that to the system, and to Grant. As if summoned, Grant appeared in the doorway, calm, composed, holding something in his hand. Walk with me. She followed him into a smaller room overlooking the runway. It was quiet here, except for the distant roar of turbines and the low hum of fluorescent lights. He handed her the object. A badge. Patricia Anderson, Systems Development Lead Tech. She held it like it might vanish. This isn't you. It is now. She looked up at him, eyes searching. Why me? He didn't hesitate. Because you saw what the rest missed. Because you fixed what wasn't yours to fix. Because you didn't wait for someone to hand you permission. A silence settled between them, heavy with what wasn't said. Finally, she clipped the badge on. It felt right. But not everyone agreed. When she stepped onto the main floor, Curtis was already waiting, leaning against the corner desk, arms folded, mouth tight. So I guess we're reporting to her now, he said, not to her, but loud enough for the whole floor to hear. Grant didn't reply. Elise did. She earned it, Curtis scoffed. Based on what? Instinct? Luck? A few quick wins? Patricia stepped forward. Based on proof, numbers, results, everything this department values just without the polished degree. Curtis stared at her like he wanted to break something. This isn't personal. It's about standards. It's always been personal, she said. Just not mine. He didn't answer. Couldn't. The silence hung sharp and loud. Later that week, Patricia led her first integration meeting. Not as a guest, not as an observer, as the one with the marker in hand. The board was already half filled with schematics when she stepped. Engineers, technicians, even 2 from the supplier's side, all watching her. She didn't lecture. She asked. She listened. Then she solved, right there, on the spot, a looping feedback issue that had stalled updates for a month. Clean lines, no ego, just answers. After the meeting, someone left a sticky note on her desk. How did you see that loop delay? It took me 6 weeks. No signature, but she smiled anyway. On Thursday, while reviewing scan performance logs, Patricia noticed something strange. A pattern of microstalls on the intake recognition system. Too minor to trigger flags, but consistent. She flagged it, verified it with Elise, wrote a patch, and deployed it. The result? A 15% reduction in idle misreads across 3 facilities. By Friday, people didn't avoid her desk anymore. They paused, asked, some even stayed, not out of obligation, but respect. That night, she returned to Hangar 9. It was quieter now. A new maintenance crew worked there, young, eager, loud. She stood by the same Cessna, now polished, recertified, flight-ready. A small nameplate was bolted near the pivot housing. System refurbishment verified. P. Anderson. Walked it in 25. She ran her fingers over the engraving. Cold steel. Warm pride. Grant appeared behind her. They wanted to move it to the training center, he said. I told them to leave it here. She turned to him, eyebrow raised. Not everything needs to be framed to be important, he added. Patricia nodded slowly. I didn't expect all this. He chuckled. I didn't expect to learn a lesson from a woman fixing machines in borrowed shoes. She smiled at that. Then he handed her a folder. Inside was an offer. Tuition. Covered flexible hours, full support to finish her degree. You don't need the paper, he said. But if you want it, we'll back you. She didn't answer right away. She looked around instead. At the hangar, at the parts no one wanted. At the place where she'd first said no to silence. Then she looked back at him. I'm not doing this for the paper. I know, he said, but maybe someone else will see you do it and believe they can too. They shook hands. Not formality, not a ceremony. Just 2 people who knew what earned respect looked like. That night, she walked back to her truck under a quiet sky. The stars were out. The runway lights blinked in rhythm. She sat in the cab, engine off, badge still clipped to her chest. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was fixing broken things to survive. She was building something. And this time, it was hers. Thanks for watching Patricia's story. If it moved you, made you think, or reminded you of someone quietly brilliant in your own life, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from and what part of the story stayed with you the most. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who could use a reminder. Your value isn't always on paper. Sometimes, it's in the grit no one sees. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you in the next story.